What happens when one of the most talented young stars in women's basketball walks into a league determined to knock her around? You get elbows, hard screens, and unrelenting physical play meant to rattle her confidence. But here's the kicker. Caitlin Clark isn't here to be anyone's punching bag. More than that, the Indiana Fever have decided she's too valuable to be left to fend for herself. They've built a defensive fortress, an entire wall of veterans and enforcers around their franchise player, and once you see how they did it, you'll understand exactly why every bully in the WNBA is starting to sweat. Before we dive into the Indiana Fever's new enforcers, let's rewind and see how Caitlin Clark became the league's favorite target in the first place. As a rookie, she was already pegged as the future face of the WNBA. Her shooting range, her fearless drives, and her highlight reel passes captured national attention. With that spotlight, however, came an onslaught of tough, borderline dirty plays. Almost from her first game, defenders hammered Clark every time she tried to get an open look. Some people chalked it up to rookie treatment, the usual bumps and bruises that come with entering a pro league. But it didn't take long for fans to notice that the hits she was taking went beyond tough defense. And she'd get swiped in the face when driving the lane, caught elbows in midair, and found herself getting blindsided by picks that looked more like body checks than standard screens. The message from certain defenders was clear: if you can't slow her down with skill, try to knock her off her game physically. But here's what set Clark apart. She never whined about it, never looked rattled. She'd pick herself up, maybe fix her ponytail, and bury a three-pointer on the very next possession. That composure made her even more dangerous. Meanwhile, management in Indiana was watching. They saw their star's resilience, but they also noticed the bruises that kept stacking up. One hard foul might be an accident, but multiple flagrant fouls across the season? That suggests a league-wide strategy to contain Clark by force. As the Fever's coaching staff and front office started planning for the future, they knew a critical piece was missing. An enforcer in basketball terms isn't just someone who fights. It's a player who protects the stars, cleans up the boards, and sets the tone that cheap shots won't go unnoticed. The Indiana Fever recognized they needed more than just one bodyguard for Clark. They needed a complete protective system. Teammates who are tough enough to deter dirty plays and skilled enough to keep the offense flowing. Team executives and coaches started plotting a strategic overhaul. Sure, it was about adding talent, but it was also a message to the rest of the league. You mess with Clark, you answer to all of us. They searched for proven winners, robust defenders, and players who wouldn't flinch when things turned physical. That's where Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, Brianna Turner, and Dana Bonner entered the conversation. For Indiana, it wasn't just plugging holes, it was about forging a new identity. In the past, the Fever were known as an under-the-radar team. They had youth, they had potential, but they weren't exactly frightening on the physical side. By bringing in a group of battle-tested veterans, Indiana basically announced, we're not here to be bullied, and we're not letting Clark stand alone. This roster reconstruction signaled that the Fever have bigger dreams than just making the playoffs. They want to win titles, and they want to keep their best player upright and unstoppable along the way. The new arrivals each bring a different weapon to the battlefield, but collectively, they form a defensive wall that's scaring the league's most relentless hitters. Natasha Howard's name sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who tries to get physical on the court. She's not just some role player, she's a 3-time NBA champion and a former Defensive Player of the Year. That resume alone demands respect. If you're planning to set a bone-crushing screen on Clark, you'd better look around first, because Howard won't hesitate to remind you exactly who she is. Howard's shot blocking, rebounding, and lightning-quick defensive rotations make her a premier enforcer. Opponents who once went after Clark are about to meet a fearsome post player who lives for shutting them down. More than just brute force, Howard has the instincts to read an offense and snuff out sneaky plays before they even begin. If she sees a suspiciously hard screen coming, you can bet she'll be there to set the record straight. But Howard's game doesn't stop at defense. She's a two-way monster, perfectly capable of putting up big points on offense. That means opposing teams can't ignore her on the other end. While Clark weaves through defenders, Howard can stretch the floor, crash the boards, or even step out to hit a three. This synergy creates endless opportunities for both of them. If you double-team Clark, you risk leaving Howard open. And if you focus too hard on Howard, Clark's going to drain shots from everywhere. Just as vital is Howard's leadership. She's played alongside legends, hoisted championship trophies, and learned what it takes to succeed at the highest level. That invaluable experience rubs off on younger teammates. When you combine her skill, her mental toughness, and her protective streak for Clark, you get an enforcer the league must reckon with. If Natasha Howard is the fierce, proven champion, then Sophie Cunningham is the feisty spark who's ready to throw herself into the fray. Cunningham's reputation is straightforward. She takes zero nonsense. She'll drive to the hoop, absorb contact, and talk a little trash dash if she has to. She's mastered the art of getting under an opponent's skin, something that happens to Clark constantly. What makes Cunningham particularly dangerous is that she's not just a tough defender. She can flat out shoot the ball, draining nearly 38% of her three-pointers in her last season. Combine that accuracy with Clark's passing vision, and defenses will have a serious problem. Focus too hard on stopping Clark's drives, and Cunningham will catch a pass and sink a dagger from deep. But the bigger story is her grit. She's known for her taekwondo background, but it's her overall attitude that stands out. She has no problem standing up for her teammates, no problem mixing it up in a heated game, and absolutely no problem letting the other team know they crossed a line. For a rising star like Clark, having someone who will protest every cheap shot and demand respect is a game changer. Most importantly, Cunningham's arrival signifies a cultural shift for Indiana. The old Fever might have shrugged off borderline fouls. Now the message is crystal clear. Any attempt to rattle Clark will be met with unwavering resistance. Cunningham adds that dash of swagger the team needed, ensuring that opponents think twice before dishing out any extra physicality. Where Cunningham brings the fire and Howard brings the muscle, Brianna Turner is the silent defensive assassin. She doesn't need to roar or flex to dominate. She simply positions herself perfectly, swats shots, and locks down the lane until the opposition realizes they're better off shooting jumpers. Standing 6'3" with impressive athleticism, Turner has been a defensive staple in the WNBA, consistently ranking among the top in blocks and rebounds. She's earned all defensive team honors more than once, and her presence in the paint is enough to make slashers second guess whether driving is worth the punishment. For Clark, that kind of backup is priceless. If teams try to set punishing screens at the top of the key or send bigs rolling into the paint to flatten her, Turner will be right there to disrupt everything. On top of that, Turner's calm demeanor helps keep the Fever's defense organized. She's not the type to get rattled or overly emotional. Instead, she channels everything into maintaining rock-solid rotations and stifling opponents. What's more, Turner's skill set unlocks plenty of fast break opportunities. Every time she forces a turnover or collects a big defensive rebound, she'll be looking to outlet the ball to Clark for a quick run down the floor. Opponents who get battered by the Fever's defense will have to hustle back to stop Clark from sinking transition threes. This lethal combination of shot blocking and quick break offense adds yet another layer of intimidation to a team that's rapidly building a fearsome identity. Every championship-minded squad needs that voice of experience, that calming influence, who can also ramp up the intensity when the game is on the line. For the Fever, Dana Bonner is exactly that. She's seen it all. Playoff battles, high-pressure moments, and matchups where the physicality nearly spiraled out of control. Her presence in the locker room instantly raises the team's collective IQ. Bonner's defensive instincts are razor sharp. She anticipates moves, knows how to rotate, and can communicate instructions in real time. Young players like Clark benefit immensely from having a seasoned pro like Bonner, reinforcing the team's defensive schemes. She's the type who'll see a player lining up a cheap shot and either steer Clark away or position herself to neutralize it. But she's not just a chess master on defense. Offensively, Bonner can knock down key shots, drive to the rim, and punish defenders who sag off. She has a history of nailing clutch buckets when everything's on the line. Pair that with Clark's playmaking, and you have a duo that can break a tight game wide open in the final minutes. More than anything, Bonner's mentorship is about teaching resilience. Clark already has nerves of steel, but Bonner ensures she never feels isolated against more physical or aggressive defenders. Over time, that bond only grows, and you get an Indiana Fever team that's not just building a protective wall, but cultivating a fearless environment for everyone, especially Clark. Bringing in these four players, Howard, Cunningham, Turner, and Bonner, was a statement that Indiana wouldn't repeat last season's mistakes. They weren't just collecting talent. They were assembling a roster that could stand shoulder to shoulder with any bruisers in the league. Historically, the Fever have been seen as a rebuilding team. They were young, fun, and brimming with potential, but critics doubted they had the defensive solidity or the brute strength to handle the WNBA's roughest matchups. Now, with their newly minted enforcer squad, the narrative is different. When fans watch Clark take the court, they'll see her flanked by veterans who know how to handle a stray elbow or two. It's not only about protection, though. This shift in culture impacts every aspect of the game. Tough, physical defense yields more possessions. More possessions mean more scoring opportunities for Clark and the rest of the Fever's offensive weapons. Combined with Clark's uncanny ability to stretch defenses to the limit, Indiana's strategy looks devastatingly balanced. Opponents may have once circled the Fever on their schedule as an easier matchup. Those days are gone. The combination of raw talent, newfound grit, and a unified locker room approach is transforming the Fever into a legitimate threat. Everyone from the coaching staff to the last player on the bench has embraced this no more cheap shots, no more freebies mindset. They're done being the league's punching bag, and they're not afraid to let everyone know it. Caitlin Clark doesn't need pity or someone else to handle her battles. She's proven she can take hard fouls, keep her composure, and still drop 30 points in a heartbeat. But it's different when you have teammates who will gladly step in and send a message that messing with Clark has consequences. This new roster is about more than just getting revenge on dirty defenders. It's about building a cohesive, championship caliber team that can compete against the WNBA's elites. With Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell also in the mix, the Fever have multiple scoring threats, an adaptable defensive system, and a wealth of on-court experience. Every time Clark steps on the court, she carries the future of women's basketball on her shoulders. She's drawing new fans to the game and inspiring the next generation to take notice of the WNBA. That's why it's crucial the league sees her at her best. By surrounding her with physically and mentally strong veterans, Indiana ensures that whenever an opponent contemplates a cheap shot, they're basically begging for trouble. In the coming season, expect highlight reels filled with Clark's deep threes and fearless drives, but also watch how quickly her new teammates respond to any attempts at intimidation. Notice the blocked shots, the chest bumping, and the unwavering unity whenever Clark takes a tumble. This is the start of a whole new era for the Fever, an era defined by ambition, tenacity, and an ironclad wall around their star player. While other teams might still be underestimating Caitlin Clark's resilience, the Indiana Fever have taken a bold stance. It's not enough for her to be a phenomenal scorer and playmaker. She needs a fortress behind her. Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, Brianna Turner, and Dana Bonner aren't just big names. They're a security detail that doubles as an offensive and defensive powerhouse. The days of Clark being shoved around are done. The moment an opponent winds up for a dirty foul, they'll have to answer to some of the league's toughest veterans, and that changes everything: how teams scout Indiana, how they defend Clark, and how they approach what was once considered an easy matchup. This season, the Fever are done being pushed around, and Caitlin Clark finally has the support she deserves. The question now is, who in the WNBA is willing to challenge that wall? Because one thing's certain, Indiana is ready, and they're not backing down. If there's ever been a time to keep your eyes on this rising powerhouse, it's now. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on the next chapter of this unfolding story. Caitlin Clark is rewriting the script for rookie stars, and the Indiana Fever are making sure she does it on her own terms. The league's bullies are officially on notice. Time to see who's brave enough to test